with my father being Zig Ziglar
Yeah.
and just being kind of like one of the icons of motivation. You just got to be
Yes.
better than good, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Did the wealthy barber have an influence on you?
No, no. Start off read Rich Dad Poor Dad, but no,
Okay.
Wealthy Barber. I did get into it a little bit, but can't say that that was a motivation.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I remember gosh, this would have been maybe 30 years ago.
Yeah.
My dad was speaking at an event and he said, "Here, I want to introduce you to someone." He was on his cell phone. It was maybe 25 years ago,
Yeah.
and it was Kiyosaki. They'd just spoken on a program together, and he said, "You're going to hear a lot from this guy." And he sent me, well, this would, I don't know what the date was, but this would tell you the date. He sent me the prototype of the cash flow game before
Wow.
before it came out, and I wish I knew where it was.
It's like finding a Bitcoin password.
I know. Probably. It's probably made people more money than Bitcoin these days.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
Absolutely.
that's amazing. So, um, you know, let me ask you a couple of questions. First of all, coming from that, as you said, genetics, coming from that genetics, what was that like? Coming up, and for you, what do you kind of see as, what this is what I realize that I can solve and I can help people with. This is what I'm meant to do, separate from what your dad did before you.
Yeah. Well, first off, as good as dad was on stage and his public image and reputation and all those things, he was even better at home. He was better on
Wow.
stage. Just unbelievable. He was an introvert at home. Most people who saw him out in public would never would never know that. He
Right.
did get he did get energy from people, so he loved being around people. But he also needed 3 or 4 hours in the morning of just digestion and reading and research and just thinking through things.
Hmm.
So he really knew how to kind of present that stage image and that excitement. He was always positive, always excited, but in around the house in a low key way. I mean, he would just talk at even keels about, I just can't wait for tomorrow. It's going to be, so much better than what we've seen.
Yeah.
Growing up in that, it was just a huge blessing. Now, when I travel around the world, there's people whose lives have been impacted by him, and we're like best friends and family now,
Yeah.
because they know what we believe, and it's impacted their life, and it's just like a connection. So
Hmm.
that's really good. But my strength and my gifts are different. Uh, I'm I'm a nerd. I like to know the why behind the why. Uh,
Okay.
and when I first started speaking, I was like, "And this is terrible. This is hard. I don't like it." And I had to really kind of get inside my own head and say what's going on. And I'd put this expectation on myself. Nobody ever told me this. I just believed it. That said, "Hey, I need to be like that on stage."
Yeah.
And I thought it was style that people wanted to see. And then I realized, no, that's not. People want you to do the best you can, right, to maximize your abilities, but they want you to be you, right? And so when I realized that, then it just allowed me to be who I am.
Mhm.
And that took, and then it became fun. So I love going out and doing it now, but it was hard in the beginning. And I would rather equip people to go out and change lives, right? And work with coaches and speakers and that, uh, to really help them understand the why behind the why. That's more of what I like to do,
Yeah.
rather than to huge audiences inspiring them to take action. I do both, but I kind of like the walk, right? I like knowing somebody for a long period of time rather than drop in and set a fire and then leave.
You've really found a place for yourself in really empowering other people to be able to step out there and do to be able to speak to crowds, to be able to speak to the public. Is that really the aspect of it that you find most enjoyable?
Yeah, I tell people, if you hear me speak or you read one of my books and and you send me a letter and it says, "Wow, I did what you said and I achieved this goal or I had this win or this happened."
Yeah.
I'll give you a high five. But if you say I read your book or went to one of the programs or became a coach, and then what you taught me, I shared with someone else and it changed their life, I'll do the Snoopy dance. That's real exciting. And then if you write me a letter and say, "Hey, I was sharing this with somebody, and then they shared it with somebody, and it changed their life." That's legacy,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's how I think through things: is how can we create, how can we kind of just transfer habits and knowledge to somebody in a way that makes it easy for them to do the same thing, and it just becomes a legacy, right? Because
Hmm.
the world's complicated. There's a lot of things going on, but sometimes we make it overly complicated. And what I like to do is just to simplify it as much as possible.
Hmm. And so when you're helping people, when you're coaching people in this journey, what do you find is the most difficult part of that uh, for people to, that they're coming to you and they're saying, "Hey, I need your help." What do you find that piece is that you're like, that's your superpower? You know that you're going to be able to help them crush in this area. What is that you find that people come to you for the most?
Yeah, and this is, we have hundreds of coaches as well, and so
Yeah.
these coaches get the same question: "Hey, can you help me?"
Yeah.
And when somebody says, whether it's personal success or health or wealth or whatever it is, when they say, "Hey, I need a coach," or I don't know, can you help me? They're usually coming at it from two places.
Okay.
Either they're stuck, they're in the middle of a disaster, they're disappointed, they're burned out, uh, and they realize I got to get some help, right?
Hmm.
Or there's the rare few who have had a coach and seen the results, and they just want to speed up the timeline, right?
Yes. Yes.
They just know that there's things they don't know that if they knew now, it could help them now. And that's where you see like Tiger Woods or Tom Brady they have 10 coaches, right? They have nutrition and health and mindset and all these
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah.
But I would say the vast majority of them, they might say that they're trying to up their game, but they're really in that first group. I'd say 80 or 90% of the people are stuck.
They're
And so
stuck.
here's the challenge. The challenge is they're obviously doing something wrong, right? And so the
Hmm.
coach comes in and says, "Okay, so tell me what's your dream? Where do you want to go? What would you like? Okay, so what's holding you back?" And then they start telling you that, and you say, "Okay, well, we need to try something different." And they're like, "Yeah, we need to try something different." And you say, "Well, why don't we try this? What do you think about this?" And they're like, "Oh no, I can never do that."
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
well, why not? Right?
Yeah.
Why couldn't we do that? So then the question becomes, okay, well, why won't you try that? And it's usually a fear.
Yeah.
And the fear leads to a limiting belief. And the fear is usually, I'm not good enough.
Right.
Right. And so it's a mindset, right? Well, what if I can't learn it? Or what if it doesn't work for me? Or, what if it takes a long time? And what if I do it wrong? And so it's this fear. And so I've been doing a lot of thinking lately around this subject, and that is that self-image is very closely connected to belief. And so you ask them, because coaching is all about questions. Coaches really don't bring a lot of answers. They ask a lot of questions that reveal the answers.
Right. Right.
And so they say, yeah, I've been trying this and that, and it's just not working. And they go, well, where do you want to go? I ask somebody, well, what do you want? you know, and they start to paint a vision of what they want. And I say, okay, so what have you been working or what have you been doing? And they tell you, well, it's not working. Okay, so we need to try something different. What do you think we should try? And so you kind of work through that. And then you say, man, that's a great plan. And then they say, yeah, but I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Why?
Right.
It's not like you're sitting here overflowing with opportunity and abundance. It's like you're here because you want to grow and you want a different result.
Yeah.
And it comes down to a fear. And the fear is, well, what if it doesn't work? Or what if I'm not good
Yes.
enough? Or, what are people going to say? And, this is contrary to my peer group and, all these different things. And so that fear is attached to a belief. And then I've started thinking about the connection between self-image and belief. And so today we live in a very polarized culture, and we see it all the time. It doesn't matter if it's progressive, far left, or right wing. If you have an opinion or a belief that's different than that person that you're talking to, it's almost like they take it as an assault and they have to defend, and they feel threatened, and
Right.
right.
Yeah.
And it's because ultimately, this is what I believe, is they have a very poor self-image. And so
Yes.
that's attached to their belief. So if you believe different, that means that they're wrong
Yes.
and they can't afford that.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
so my dad said that the number one cause of a poor self-image is the lack of unconditional love. And so the challenge is we live in a very conditional culture.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
you because of what you do, right? Or this
That's
result
right.
or that, right?
Yeah. How much you make, what you drive, or even I love you because of how you treat me.
Yes.
Right. Which
So it's
is the
very
norm.
conditional.
Yeah.
And so I've worked with wounded warriors, and these guys. A lot of them they come from two of the guys I'm thinking of. One from Colombia, one from Dominican Republic. The military was their ticket, right? They got education, they got training, they served in Iraq. They both got blown up. They both are amputees. And all their identity was in what they did and what they had, right? I'm a soldier. This is a career. It's going to take me here. And immediately that was taken away from them.
Right.
And so we talk about this be, do, and have. You got to be the right person, do the right things, and you can have all that life has to offer.
Yes. Yes.
So our value is who we are, not what we do or what we have.
Yes.
But
Yes.
but the culture input is no, it's what you do and it's what you have.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if I have a very strong self-image, and um, you and
And
I
when you
have,
do that, your who you are is what suffers, right? If you're focused on what you're doing and what you have, then what suffers is who you're being, as
right,
opposed to, the other way around.
right. It's like
Yeah.
when I work with leaders, I say, well, what's the difference between short-term confidence and long-term confidence? Well, short-term confidence comes out of a lot of times it's pride and arrogance based on the results I got yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Long-term confidence comes out of humility and the understanding that I can learn. And it's actually fantastic when disruption comes, because I am humble enough to go seek out wisdom from other people who
Yeah.
can help me learn, so that I can take it, so that this disruption becomes my advantage. Uh, there's the greatest wealth is always built in times of disruption.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
But if you
And,
look at disruption as a personal attack on you, it's going to paralyze you,
mhm,
right? You're going to try to live in the past, and you can't be successful living in the past. So when you have a
yeah.
really strong self-image and disruption happens, you understand quickly it's nothing to do with you. In fact, you were
Yeah.
made for this time,
Yeah.
right? If you have a
Yeah.
poor self-image, well, it's all about me, and
Right.
this is terrible.
Right. Well, you know what? I think we've seen that a great deal over the last couple of years. Obviously, everyone dealing with the world, dealing with the impact of COVID. And one of the things that I remember sharing with people was, you know, is this is this happening to you or for you? And if you can understand that slight shift, because a lot of people were feeling like, oh, COVID is happening to me, and there was a very disempowered conversation that people were having, as opposed to being able to look at it and go, actually, this is working for me. It's an opportunity for me to spend more time with my kids, spend more time studying, spend more time doing these other items that would have all been taken up in the busy life of traveling back and forth and from places. And lockdowns could actually help a person if they were willing to
Oh
focus
yeah,
themselves in, right?
it's all your perspective and your attitude around it.
Yeah.
One of my friends, his name is Rabbi Daniel Lappin, and he's got a pretty cool statement. He says, when you solve a problem, you're often rewarded with a certificate of appreciation. We call that money. The more problems you solve, the more certificates of appreciation you get.
Hmm.
And then this is pretty interesting. He says, uh, the creator of the universe, or he says this, God is never happier with his children than when they're solving the problems of his other children. And so when disruption happens, it's a target rich environment. There's more problems than there's ever been. And, I believe that we all, as humans, I think we all have a common purpose, and that's to serve our fellow human.
Hmm.
And so, is there anything better than figuring out how to solve other people's problems?
I think there's few things out there that make you feel as good or as empowered out
Right.
of it. That's for sure. Satisfaction, fulfillment. When you know that you've been able to empower someone else, it the certificates of appreciation don't fully quantify that.
Yeah. Um, one of my friends is a real estate investor, and
Yes.
he does multifamily, and they buy Class C and they upgrade them. They
Yes.
change whole neighborhoods. I mean,
Yes.
the whole neighborhood is revitalized when they come in and do what they do.
Hmm.
And then he does extra. He provides ongoing things for his tenants, and elevates them, and he goes to bat for them. And I look at that and I go, man, that's an amazing gift. I mean, think about it. The creator of the universe is smiling because of
Hmm.
what this person's doing to
Yeah.
solve people's problems.
Yeah.
And it's like, when disruption comes and all these challenges come, more people have problems than ever. You don't
Yeah.
have to look far. You just got
Yeah.
to connect your gifts and talents with the problems that are out there and get busy. Right.
Right. Right.
Right.
Well, so what I'm hearing is a couple things. The biggest thing that you encounter is people being stuck, right? People are stuck in some form or another, and really being able to help them see what it is and even come up with that answer on their own is really the power of a coach, the power of a mentor, and being able to accelerate that time, right? You're years ahead of them. You're able to shorten that learning curve. And the aspect that I'm hearing is probably one of the most important in all of that is helping people to see that if you can solve problems, it it kind of solves all the other issues. I'm not sure that that's the solution. Is that the solution to getting unstuck? Is start focusing on how to help other people fix their problems?
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Yeah,
I think the first piece of it though is there's got to be hope.
yeah,
If I don't, the student who has no hope of passing the test won't even study, right? They're done.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so when you're coaching somebody, when you're working with somebody, or maybe you're listening and you're in that kind of hopeless position, um, here's a question I like to ask: Is there anything you can do in your personal life, your family life, your business life in the next week that'll make things worse?
Yeah, probably a ton of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there is.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So let me ask you another question. Is there anything you can do in your personal life, your family life, your business life the next week that'll make things better?
Mm,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
there is, right?
A ton of them. Yeah.
I mean, I could get enough sleep. I could drink enough water. I could do a little exercise. I could, I mean, there's a ton of things I can do. Okay.
Hmm.
So here's what just happened. Whether you realize it or not, in your own mind, you told yourself that you have the power to make things better or worse, and the choice is yours.
Mm.
And that's where hope is born. And so,
Yes. Yes. What one of the things that I found, and the reason for this podcast was I realized along the way that the how of doing something has very little to do with building wealth, because there's so many people can teach you how to do something, and if you don't have the leadership aspect, if you don't have the game right up here, then you'll never go on and do that. If you don't have the hope, as you were just sharing, that belief that there is something that you can do, then what ends up happening is you'll never actually do the how. You'll never actually work the system, so to say.
right. Yeah. And if you don't believe you can, you don't have the hope that you can, your effort is never going to amount to much.
Yeah.
And then I think people, because everything's conditional and they're not achieving the level of success they want, they take too much credit for their failure.
Wow. Okay.
So, what do I mean by that? Well, there's a story of my dad in his early career. This was in the '60s. He's just getting started as a speaker,
Yeah.
and and this group had asked him to come and speak, and it was a 2.5 hour drive to this other city from where he lived. And he liked to get there a couple of hours early to make sure he knew what the setup was going to be. And so he leaves out and he's driving both ways, paying his own gas. He's not getting paid. I mean, this is like the very beginning. And he gets to the town or the city and he stops for directions. And they write out in detail on a sheet of paper the directions. So dad gets
Yes.
back in his car,
Yes.
follows them, and then an hour later, he's 30 miles further from where he's trying to go. And so, what does he do? Right? He followed the directions perfectly. So, my first question is, was it his fault he was given the wrong directions? No, he asked looked like a well intended human being. They gave him the
Hmm.
wrong. It's not
Yeah.
his fault. So how many people are stuck or not having the success that they want to have because they were given the wrong directions? I mean,
Yes. A lot of people.
in wealth, I would say
Yeah.
most people are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because where are they getting their directions from? People who don't have wealth, people who so
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
at that point in Zig Ziglar's career, he had a choice. He could say, "Oh no, my career is finished before it even starts. I'm not going to get there on time. My reputation is ruined. This is awful." And he could hang his head and drive back home, or he could stop at the next place and get the right directions. And so he does get there on time because he left plenty of time to get there. And the rest is history. And so if you got bad directions, don't give yourself credit for that. Acknowledge take responsibility that you're in this place,
Yes.
but you can go and get the right directions.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so if you have a low self image or the wrong belief, you're thinking, well, everybody thinks bad of me and they're going to laugh if I fail again.
Yeah. Well, isn't that the, oh my goodness, you brought up a really interesting point. So one of the things that people worry about is that, well, what if you say doesn't work? And because everyone has had that situation where they've been given the wrong directions, and so now it taints the every other time someone else tries to give them directions. It covers their glasses, and now everything's colored, and all because of one or two people, or a few people that perhaps have steered them the wrong way, and now they're not sure on who to trust and whether they can trust the next set of directions that are given to them.
Yeah. And so, I'll come in with a nut because I'm the nerd. Human potential is normally judged on two criteria. The most common one is we see it in education, and it's IQ. It's
Hmm.
like, hey, are you in the smart part of the class, right? And and they'll say, okay, because of your IQ, your potential is this. Well, the reality is that we can all raise our IQ a little bit, but it's not like it's going to go up like double or anything, right? We can learn
Right.
and study. But the other measure of human potential is how much do I care? How much grit do I have? How much resilience? How much perseverance?
Yes.
And so I tell you what, I can tell you who you want to work with. Somebody who's relentless,
Yeah.
who is like, just feed me more, teach me more, teach me more. And if
Yes.
it takes a while, that's okay. If I don't get it the first time, I don't care.
Yes.
I
Yes.
I'm gonna go after it, and I'm gonna build some momentum. I'm gonna do the right things in the right way. I don't care about home runs. I care about singles. And if I get up to bat, I know over a period of time I might hit a home run, but I'm just going to start implementing principles and I'm going to be relentless about it.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, they're a 20-year overnight success.
Yeah, that's
All
right.
right. Right. And so,
It's actually been said that resiliency is a better indicator of success than intelligence.
oh yeah, it is definitely.
Yeah.
And so the people who have been burned, you can either look at it as, I think John Maxwell said, you win some, you learn some.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you just learned. Man, this is unbelievable. You're in a better position than you've ever been in,
Hmm.
right? Because you learned something that's the stove is hot, so we don't go and do that anymore.
Hmm.
Or usually when I look at people who say, "Oh, that didn't work," and I say, "Well, what were you supposed to do?" And there's like 10 steps in the process. They usually skipped one of the steps,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? Because I'm smarter than the system. I'll just skip that step,
Yes.
right? No,
Yeah.
anything, it's the things that are most essential to success are avoiding the the pits, right? And so, but it takes work to avoid the pits sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when we think the pits don't apply to us, that's when we get in trouble.
Well, I think one of the funniest parts is that when sorry, funny isn't the right word, but when people have that happen, when they've trusted someone and they steered them wrong, and then they think, maybe they paid some money for a course and it didn't work for them, and so then they think, oh, forget it, I'm just going to do it on my own. And what they lose, myself included, this is one of the things I realized, is one of the things that I lost in saving that money from, you know, uh, taking more learning, finding new mentors, that kind of stuff, is that I lost time in that process. I kept moving forward, doing something here, and did that wrong, and then you get back up, you figure it out, you do something else, and you keep growing, which is amazing. But you've now all of that learning has to be your own. And I think something that you said earlier about the power of a coach is being able to accelerate time. They're able to point out those gaps for you, those holes that you're going to fall into, and be able to accelerate your journey along the way. And I just find that there are a lot of people that they can see the resiliency in one area, or the need for the resiliency in one area, but perhaps not in the other.
Yeah, and what you just said is very true. In one of our coaching programs, it's called Choose to Win, and we help people create goals in the 7 areas of life:
Yeah.
mental, spiritual, physical, family, financial, personal, and career. And it's interesting to me how some people are like unbelievably fantastic in 3 or 4 of those areas,
Yes.
and then really weak in the other ones.
Yeah.
And it's like a mind, it's like a they've chosen to believe that, well, you know what, I'm good in business and I'm good in my uh physical health, but I'm just financially, I just need to make more money because I just don't know, I'm just not good at that. And I'm like,
Right.
wait a second, you've got the discipline in your physical life and you've got a great reputation and discipline in your business, but you don't have any discipline in your financial. Yeah, it's not, I just got to figure out how to make more money. And I'm like, ooh, it's like, it's a mindset. And
Yes.
so,
There's a disconnect there.
yeah, it's a disconnect because
Yeah.
if it's the same mindset that allows you to be successful in one, allows you to be successful in all of them.
Hmm.
And so that's why people are complicated, because they're really good in some areas and, oh no, I don't do that. It's like Carol Dweck, they've got a growth mindset in these areas and a fixed mindset over here. And I'm like, no, no, no. You have the potential to have a growth mindset everywhere.
Yeah.
It might take longer in some of the areas that are just not natural to you, but you're still growing. You'll still get there.
Yeah. But isn't this I don't know, the big one for most men on the planet? Uh, they're gonna excel in one area of their life. Meanwhile, the other area is completely falling apart. Men that are great in business and investing, they're amazing over here. Meanwhile, their family life is completely falling apart. Or there's men that maybe they've got a great family life, but the finances are falling apart over here.
Yeah, I think it's cross cultural that.
Right.
I mean, it's not just US or Canada or the West. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just like everywhere.
Yeah, and what would you say about that disconnect? Because I really think that that's one huge thing for a lot of people run into, and I hear it all the time on social media where people will ask, well, they'll say this area of my life is doing great, but in this area, and and that disconnect is always there. What would you say to people that identify that disconnect when you're coaching them?
So I have a statement or a quote, and I say
Yeah.
this: we create the future we see.
We create the future we see. Yes, I hear that.
Right. So we create the future we see. And so you got to start with, well, what future do you see for yourself? And sometimes
Yeah.
people are so, they've got the blinders on and all they see is business and bank, right? I mean, that's the only future they're looking at.
Yes.
I mean, there's a divorce attorneys in the Dallas area that specialize in representing men in a divorce. And literally one of their radio ads is, you've worked your whole life, you've got the country club membership, you've got the nice house, but now you're losing your family and your health.
Yeah.
It's like, and you're
Yeah.
asking, why did I do all this? Right.
Yeah.
And so we've got to step back and say, well, what future do I want to create? And that's why we really talk about balanced success. And we say, okay, so what's success look like from a mindset perspective? And
Hmm.
what is this thinking successfully and how I view the world, and when challenges happen, how do I respond to that? And then spiritually, what does success look like for me? I mean, do I have peace of mind when I go to bed at night? And do I feel like there's a higher cause out there that I'm supporting? And then uh, physically, what does success look like for me? Am I able to chase my grandkids around in the mountains when I'm 80? Right? Does that what my future physical, right? Or or am I just happy to get 3.5 hours of sleep with a CPAP machine? I mean, it's like, what is success physically and family?
Right.
What does
Right.
it look like? And so we got to get really clear on what success looks like in all areas, family, financial, personal, and career, because we create the future we see. And
Yeah.
so, why is that important? Well, the way we see our future determines our thinking today. If our thinking is negative and hopeless and there's nothing I can do about it and the world is against me, well, dad said that a positive attitude will outperform a negative attitude every time.
Hmm. Yep.
A positive attitude won't let you do anything, but it will let you do everything better than a negative attitude. So, what
Yeah.
future do you want to create in each of those areas? Well, so that determines my thinking. My thinking determines my performance,
Yeah.
right? And my performance creates my future.
I
So,
gotta ask you something about that, because I was literally just I was talking with a waitress and about this. What's your problem? Actually, we were having this discussion. The waitress came over, and so we asked her this question: what problem are you dealing with? And she said, well, I always leave my schoolwork till it's too late, or not till it's too late, and until like uh 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I will go crazy on it till 4 in the morning, and then I get it done and I do really well, but I'm always anxious, and I'm always leaving it to the last minute. And one of the things that I keyed in on was that negative emotion was, she sort of relied on it to be able to get her to do what she wanted to do anyways, and she couldn't tap into the positive thoughts, and instead she was stuck with the negative thoughts, and it was only once those negative thoughts were overwhelming her that she could then move herself into action. Can you say something about that? Because I see that one oftentimes. That's a reoccurring story where people will only move once they're getting, prodded in the butt.
yeah.
Right?
And, and so the fear of loss is always greater than the hope for gain.
Yes, yes.
Right.
How, if you can help us solve that one, that one's huge. How do
can
we
help.
stop from that? Come on, tell
I've got
tell us.
a plan. Okay, so I'll share my plan. And
I want to stop leaving the writing of the book till the last minute, doing my taxes late. The phone calls I've got to make, the sales calls, all of these things. How do I stop leaving them till the end?
yeah, and I had this real world conversation. I was speaking at a conference, and this I call him a young man. He was early 30s. He had 3
Yeah.
kids, very successful
Yes.
in his career. And he came to me and he said, "Man, I've got this idea, and but I just never get to it." And I said, "Well, how hard is it to get to?" And he said, "Well, it's in my strength zone, and if I just put a couple of hours into it, 3 or 4 times a week, I think it could really pay off." And I'm like, "Well, what does really pay off mean?" And he said, "Well, I think it could change my life." So we're talking at least 6 figures and probably close to 7 figures. He was a programmer and he had some ideas, and he's
Wow.
also an investor and stuff. And I said, "Well, why don't you do it?" And he said, "Well, I mean to, and then I play video games all night."
Yes. I've heard this story before. Keep going.
And I said, "Man, I tell you what, I have a plan for you that works every single time." I said, "So would the payoff be more than $10,000?" He said, "Oh yeah, it'd be much more." And I said, "Like more than 5 or 10 times?" And he said, "Yeah, more than 10 times that." So now we've got this, loaf of bread and a boxcar. It's going to be way more than $10,000. And I said, "Okay, here's what we do. What I want you to do is to put together a 90-day plan of what you're going to do every day. And you're going to write me a check today for $10,000. And then at the end of 90 days, if you do everything you say on every day, I'll send you back the $10,000. And if not, it's mine."
Yes.
he go, I go, "Do you think that would work?" He goes, "I know that would work." I go, "Well, write me the check." And he didn't. It's a belief issue.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe he can. So that's a self-image and a belief,
Mm.
right? So he's got a false belief or a wrong belief, a limiting belief that's keeping him from doing that,
Yeah.
right? Dad tells a story in one of his audio programs, and this guy came to his event, and he was so big, right? He was like 500 plus pounds, so big that he took up 2 chairs in the auditorium. And he scraped together, borrowed some money, he bought the audio tapes, and the series was called Changing the Picture. And it's about changing the picture of how you see yourself in your mind. And he listened to it like 8 hours a day. And so he goes down to the men's clothing store and he buys a suit that's literally 12 sizes smaller than he is, and he puts it on layaway. And then he says he goes to the grocery store and he's shopping, and a 5-year-old girl, like 5-year-olds do, when they see something, they point it out, yelled out in the grocery store, "Mama, look at that fat man." And she said he said she pointed at him, and when she did, he turned around to see who she was pointing at,
Yes.
because in his mind he was already in great physical health. The picture he had of himself was a fit, athletic man. And he
Yes.
writes in the story, he said, "That's the day I know I lost the weight." And so when somebody is in a position where they know what to do, but they don't do it, it's because their belief is that they can never do that. And so it's like if you were in a bicycle accident and you get we call it road rash here, right?
Hmm.
And you
Yeah.
get all the pebbles and stuff stuck in your skin. Well, when you get up, you don't put band-aids over that. You go and scrub that baby out, right? I mean, you got to clean deep in there to get it out. And you might have to do it 2 or 3 times. And so that's the way our mind is. If we're not achieving what we want, it's usually because of a poor self image and a limiting belief that are conspiring against us. And we've got to clean our mind out just like you would road rash. And
Yeah.
so you got to put constantly in the information that's going to take you where you want to go.
Yeah.
And that's the number one lesson I learned from my dad is to choose the input that you put into your mind that's going to take you where you want to go.
Right.
And you've got
Right.
to eliminate the stuff that's holding you back, and you got to amp up and implement and input the stuff that's going to take you where you want to go.
What do you see as the thing that you're trying to scrape out right now at this point in your journey in your life? What's the thing for you that you're trying to clear out?
Yeah. So my biggest calling is impacting leaders who realize that the way we've led in the past no longer works.
Okay.
And they're looking for a new way to lead. And I call that
Mhm.
coach leadership. And so what we do is we take all these coaching principles, all these foundational principles, and we use it to lead our people. And it changes everything. And
Mhm.
it's simple, but it's work. I mean, you got to do it regularly,
Yeah.
right? But that's what I'm because I at the end of last year I said, what intentional legacy do I want to build over the next 20 years of my life if God gives me that? And that's what it
Yeah.
is to teach leaders how to lead. And really, a leader's responsibility is each person on their team, their job is to make them more capable tomorrow than they are today so that person can achieve their life goals.
Yeah. Now,
That's what
but are you seeing something that that you need to clear out for yourself to be able to make that happen? Like, is there because you're talking about the change within, creating that hope and all of that stuff. Is there something in there in you that you're realizing, okay, I need to clear this out to
yeah.
move towards that?
So 15 years ago, I made a conscious decision to move away from working with large businesses because of the politics.
Yes.
And and so I've been focused on speakers, trainers, coaches, small business owners. That's been my life. And now this new message is resonating with big companies.
Yes.
And so I've had to clear out um, that reality and approach it from a different angle.
I get that. Now, so that's at your stage. This is what's really trying to take away from what you're building. So what's next for you, Tom?
Yeah, so it's basically what we've just talked about. It's equipping what I call a coach leader coach
Yeah.
to go out and impact businesses, to work with large businesses to help them
Hmm.
change the way they lead their people
Hmm.
uh, in a meaningful and powerful way. I mean, because what we know is this that people want autonomy and they want flexibility. That's what people
Yes.
want, right?
Autonomy and flexibility. Yes.
And so, what is a leader's job? It's to equip, support, inspire, encourage each person on their team so much, train and develop them so much that they can go out and fulfill the mission without any help. In other words, our job is to give them autonomy, to make them
Hmm.
a Navy SEAL, for lack of a better example. Navy SEALs are the most trained soldiers in the world. And when a mission comes in, this is the way it's handed down. Here's the mission, get her done. How can I help?
Hmm.
But you can only do that if you know how to develop a Navy SEAL, right? And
Yeah.
so leaders, it's the same way. So how do we grow our people and make that growth and that desire for each person be internalized from the inside out. How do you get your people to want to grow? And that's one of the things that we teach our leaders is how do you get people to want to grow?
Yeah. Wow. So if people want to learn more about being leader coaches, how do they do that? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm one of these weird people. I give out my email. It's tom@ziglar.com. And Ziglar is Ziglar. So just tom@ziglar.com. You can find out about us at Ziglar.com. And, we got 6.5 million Facebook fans, and, we're kind of out there. So there's a lot of ways to find us.
Yeah. One or two followers out there.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Tom, thank you so much for your time. I know that we've kind of hit the time for today. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with us, and really being about the purpose of giving people hope and helping leaders build leaders in this world, which is sorely needed. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for watching and listening. This has been another episode of the Leadership to Wealth podcast, and we'll see you guys soon.